Often people think there needs to be a big issue, but honestly, building those tools, building those skills, what a superpower is kind of what I call it, like self-awareness. What a superpower to understand what your body's doing, why you're doing it, thoughts, feelings, all those great things.
To After the Routine. I'm your host, Rachelle Provo, and if you haven't done so yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. I'm here today with an incredible human who is doing incredible work, Cait Nelson. Cait is the owner of Lyft Counselling and a registered psychotherapist specializing in performance psychology. She's a former gymnast, cheerleader, gym director, and has worked for over a decade in sport for development with the Toronto Blue Jays. So thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, Cait.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out. I've been looking forward to it for, I think, 2 months now. So I'm really glad it's finally here.
Me too. So for those who don't know, how did you get started in gymnastics and cheerleading?
So I grew up really rurally and there wasn't a lot of option for sport. My mom actually drove me an hour both way, which I'm hearing now from athletes that that's like not even anything. Most athletes are like hour and a half, 2 hours. But yeah, we commuted to practice. I trained as a gymnast pretty much my whole life, all the way through university. And I loved it. It was kind of like who I was, everything. It was everything. And then when that started to end, it was really hard, a little bit devastating. And cheerleading found me in university. And the cheerleading team that I was on, it was very northern. It was Nipissing University. So it was like second year they ever had it. Cheer was still really new. I remember we went to competition and we were performing like everything at prep level at level 6. And we thought we were so good. And then we got there and we're like, So I spent 5 years at that team, loved it, fell in love with cheerleading, moved back to my northern town, started a cheerleading club, ran that for 5 years, moved to Toronto with Chris from Cheer Factory. And we started a life in Toronto. And then that's when I did the sport for development stuff, all that kind of thing. And then that led me into the mental health world.
Very cool. And then you talked about it a little bit there, but like you went and worked with the Toronto Blue Jays. So can you talk about like what you did in that role?
Yeah, that was a big role. I never actually thought that I would end up going to work at the Rogers Centre every day, but it was really interesting because I got to be around like the most elite sport you could possibly, or like the highest level in that atmosphere every day. But my role was more on the charitable side of things. And we built programming across Canada for marginalized youth. And so what we did is, or what my role was, designing programs for specific outcomes. And I worked mostly in First Nation communities, coast to coast, east to west, north to south, and in life promotion. And so suicide prevention would be another word for it. And in that role, we use sport, so often baseball, as a vehicle to build protective factors, which would be like self-confidence, all of those things that help prevent suicide for these young kids in these really tough situations. So I learned a ton in that role. I worked a lot alongside mental health professionals. And within that experience, I was like, you know what? I think I need to shift. I want to put my two passions together, sport and mental health. And here I am.
That's awesome. So then how did you transfer it from going into being a registered psychotherapist and then starting to specialize in these areas of cheerleading, tumbling, and mental blocks?
So the mental blocks kind of just found me. I had no intention of going there, which is quite funny. I was thinking like athletes need stuff. Like I was an athlete. I was a mess half the time with like anxiety and everything else, pressure. And so that felt like a really great place to be. And then what my clientele ended up being was like, hey, I have a mental block. Hey, I have a mental block. And so we just sort of naturally fell into it. So yeah, psychotherapist turned mental block helper.
I love that you say that because like when I was in university and I was going through for marketing, I was like, I will never work at a marketing agency. I'm going to work at the brand level. And then like flash forward like 10 years, I own my own agency. And I'm like, you got to be open to the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the natural flow of it has been really wonderful because I feel like it's where I'm supposed to be. I really am enjoying it a lot. Yeah.
So then as part of that, you decided to open Lyft. So can you talk for people who don't know, like what is Lyft? What do you do?
Yeah. So Lyft is a psychotherapy private practice. So we see tons of different people from all walks of life. And the cheerleading athlete side of things is just one part of it. So my clients in a day could be literally from any demographic with a ton of different presenting concerns. And then the cheerleaders are stuck right in there with them with like performance anxiety, mental blocks, self-esteem. And then also there doesn't have to always be like a big issue to come to therapy. Sometimes it's just like, hey, we're here because we want to be as healthy as we can and as prepared as we can. So yeah, those are the kind of demographics that we work with. And then our team is growing. We're 2 years old in September. So
I love that.
I know. I was talking about it with Chris today. I was like, holy crap, like 2 years in September. And we have students working for us. We have a couple other therapists on board. So we're a team of 6, and it feels really nice to like have coworkers and to be working towards, mental health.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things that's such a neat opportunity to build a business and then build a team of people that can then help expand just the impact that you want to make.
Yeah, it's been nice. When I started, I was like, oh my gosh, where am I going to find clients? And now it was funny because Emma, one of my coworkers, we were talking just last fall and we're like, we cannot keep up. Like we cannot keep up. And I think you had messaged me kind of shortly after that. And I was like, Rachelle, I can't talk. It's too deep. So it's nice in that way. And then of course the summer is quite much quieter. But yeah, we're definitely feeling the need and feeling like we're making a bit of a difference. So I think that that's very rewarding.
And I love that you say there doesn't always need to be an issue, because I am always very vocal to my athletes about therapy and how like beneficial it is. I tell them I'm in therapy, and I always like to tell them that you can go to therapy and then you can come back. And sometimes it's just a reminder of the tools in your toolbox. And that's just as beneficial.
Yeah, I love that. I think often people think there needs to be a big issue, but honestly, building those tools, building those skills, what a superpower is kind of what I call it. Like self-awareness, what a superpower to understand what your body's doing, why you're doing it, thoughts, feelings, all those great things.
I love that. And then we've talked about it a couple of times in past episodes, but cheerleading is such a difficult sport. And not just because of like, we throw people in the air and we flip our bodies and we like do these incredible things, but there's also a lot tied with judging and perception and perfection. And the fact that like it is a full team sport where like everyone makes an impact. So as a psychotherapist, what are kind of those themes that maybe you see pop up more in the cheerleading or gymnastics and tumbling space?
Boy, there's a lot of themes that pop up. I think the thing that comes to mind, you mentioned perfectionism. I think we're in a perfectionist sport. We're kind of in a perfectionist culture, I would say, with school, with sport, home responsibilities. Kids often have it coming at them from all different ways, especially with social media. And so perfectionism is a coping mechanism that's quite harmful for athletes and can put them in pretty tough situations. So it's something that I work on a lot with athletes. And it often is something that is one of the main drivers of mental blocks too. We see it often in that context. So yeah, perfectionism would definitely be a theme. I would say that another theme is like wanting to be liked. I don't know if you remember being an athlete and like just the look on your coach's face, or like maybe like the change of tone in your coach's voice, and you're like, oh my God, she hates me. Oh my God, she hates me. And like, of course, that's not the actual perception of it. I remember becoming a coach and having this like realization that I didn't hate any of my athletes, that I actually really loved all of my athletes, but I would get critiques sometimes of like, you look like you hate us because you have like that like resting, not so nice face. So I was like, man, like I wish I would have known that as an athlete, that like not everybody hates me. Not everybody's actually paying that much attention to me. And so that fear of perception, the comparison to other people, and that big focus on results. I think that's something else we see a lot with athletes is like my identity is wrapped up in my sport. And so if I don't do well in my sport, I'm a bad person. If I lose, then I'm a bad person. Mistakes become a lot bigger than just a mistake. They become a hit to your whole foundation of self, which can be a really tough spot for athletes to be standing on.
Which is also hard because when we have so many athletes, especially in that U12 age group where, they're 8 to 12 and they're learning all of the nuances that come with being a human and then also like being a person in a sport and, friends and teammates and coaches, and that comparison part I know can be really, really hard for a lot of them. And then when you add in, like you said, social media, where now they're just seeing these incredible skills. They're seeing these like, well, we're going for all these medals and the highest level and we're pushing these things. And it's funny that you say that because I think it was yesterday I commented on someone's post and they were talking about the process of learning a new skill. And I was like, I really think that we need to make the process of learning skills whimsy. Like it just needs we need to like love and appreciate it and just like have fun with learning the process, because it gets to a point where like you get the result and it's like, oh, okay, well now I have it. So then I have to push for the next thing, right? Whereas like if we take time to be present in that moment and like, hey, like it comes with like a lot of hard work and I'm determined and I'm really strong. And there's all these things that go into that process of getting the results. I think if we have ideas for whimsiness, that's what I'm going for.
I actually love that. I was thinking about this, the students with Lyft, student therapists, they're working on presentations right now. We were talking about it this morning, and the process often comes up in any kind of mindset work. Like, don't focus on the result, focus on the process. And it's all like fine and dandy to hear that. But as a coach, when you have so much pressure to hit zero, to get the results, I mean, like, it's not just about athlete pressure as a coach. Like, you want your athletes to be happy, you want parents to be happy, but then also I feel like the culture of cheer is very much people go where there's medals. And so this is now also a business thing. It's like the pressure is massive to get results. And so if the focus is on results in a gym, like, of course it is. Naturally, it would be. And so a lot of what we do with coaches is we try to help them with the language around process, because it's really hard to get there if everything is driving home result, 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 result. It's hard to be a coach. Really hard.
Yeah. And you also can get very stuck in your emotions that like, I'm getting frustrated and maybe that's coming out in our body language or the way that we're talking. So I love that you mentioned that though, because like as a coach, it is hard. And we often talk about therapy from an athlete perspective, but we don't talk about it from a coach perspective.
Yeah. I was pondering on this the other day. I often speak from the athlete perspective, and often we structure trainings and stuff to create better spaces for athletes. Mm-hmm. And then I get on social media and I'm like, hey, don't do this because that'll make the mental block worse. And I'm like, gosh, like coaches hearing this, like, do they sit there and be like, shit, like, is she talking about me? Did she hear about my gym and therapy? And I can imagine as a coach, that would be really tough to be critiqued from all angles, right? Like we have full teams critiquing us as coaches. We have parents critiquing us as coaches. And then I think as Lyft, what we try to do is we try to be in corners for coaches. We try to make sure that we're not just another voice telling them that they've done something wrong, but actually understanding why they've done what they've done and then trying to offer another set of tools to help them along that process that's often quite confusing and challenging and emotional, as you say.
Yeah. Too. So then what would be some examples of where it would be really beneficial for coaches to then go into therapy?
Gosh, so many. I think so one of my favorite parts about my job is it's not even therapy. Coaches call us and they use us as consultation. So they're like, hey, like, Cait, we have this issue in our gym. This is what's going on. This is what parents saying. This is what athletes going through. This is our experience. And so it's navigating those so that athlete is supported in the best way possible. Parent feels heard and also supported in the best way possible. And coach is supported, but also runs a business that is ethical and also like has good risk management and that aligns with their values and what they need to do in terms of their goals for the season. It's really hard to create strong teams and balance everybody's emotions at the same time. In fact, I don't think that is a coach's job. And that's often what we talk about. It's like mental health's not your job. This over here is your job, to create strong, healthy teams with great culture that can perform really well. That's your job. So let's focus on that. How do we get there? And how do we set the boundaries around what you have to do in a way that minimizes the conflict that happens in a season?
Yeah. And I also think that there are a lot of areas that maybe coaches aren't aware of where they can get more training to help them. Like I know there are things on the NCCP or My Locker where you can get additional training about mental health to help support athletes and mitigate some of those areas of harm that we talk about, which we'll talk about in a second. But there's things that I know I've taken a few years ago now where it was like mental health for youth specifically and like the conversations and how you can have those. So there are lots of ways that they can get that. And then being able to go into therapy and then get personalized feedback and ability to use those tools in their toolbox that they can take back to their athletes and then be positive role models in how they're then representing themselves and their emotions and how they deal with things that come up, because our athletes learn so much from the people that they see like 6 hours a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think coaches have it, like athletes are under pressure, but so are coaches. It's just a little bit different. But I just, like I spoke about identity, all that kind of stuff. That's part of coaching too. Trying to be everything for everyone, pleasing everyone, all of that stuff. It's hard. It's a hard world to walk. So yeah, we like to be that resource for them.
I love that. And so I touched on it there for a second, but there are ways that a lot of areas of harm can happen when either as a coach or as an athlete. So can you talk a little bit about those and the responsibility that the cheer world has to help make sure those don't happen?
Yeah, I mean, harm happens all the time. I hear about it all the time. Like athletes come and they're like, like coach said this to me and it made me feel this way. Being a former coach, being a former gym director, all those things, I'm like, oh gosh, like I totally know where coach was coming from on this one. I've made terrible mistakes as a coach. I probably rocked some athletes' worlds back in my day in not great ways, but we all learn from those situations. And so I guess the point I'm getting at is like harm is often very unintentional, especially in sport, because we're just trying to get the results. I mean, we're trying to get there in the only ways that we know how. And so what we try to do with coaches is give them the language to mitigate that and also give athletes the tools to persevere through that. So yes, harm can happen in many different ways. There's unintentional harm, and then there's harm, I think, that is avoidable. I think when I think of cheerleading and what we preach in most sports, what we all stand for is zero tolerance to abuse, to athletes receiving any kind of harm. And I'm struggling with that zero tolerance in this sport because I don't know that it actually exists in some of the things that we're witness to, because people who cause harm are still in leadership positions and they're continuing to be celebrated or given platforms, hired, given power in certain situations. And if there was zero tolerance, they wouldn't be there. So yeah, I think in my position, being in the cheer world, hearing stories from coast to coast that are remarkably similar about individuals causing harm for athletes and then having them consistently put in those places of power, that's a hard place to be. I think it's frustrating for a lot of people to see. And so I guess why I'm bringing it up is I think actions often do speak louder than words. We can preach inclusivity, we can preach safe spaces, but in reality, they don't actually exist unless we do something. So yeah, I don't believe zero tolerance is here yet. I would like it to be, but yeah, it's not something that I've witnessed.
It's really important that we have those conversations and then hold things accountable and hold people accountable and rules accountable, because like you said, it's not happening right now. So where can we make it happen?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the word accountable is so important. I often think of us as taxi drivers. If our job is to protect young people and young people come and they tell us something that needs to be addressed, or we witness something that needs to be addressed, our job is not to fix it. Sometimes I think when we hear things or we see things, it feels like this massive heavy weight that we don't really know what to do with it. And then suddenly we don't do anything. Or it's such a threat to our opportunities or to our success that we feel paralyzed by it. But if we just be a taxi driver and we bring that information to the correct spaces and we just act within our values as much as we possibly can, sometimes it feels like a little bit more bite-sized.
Now, you also talked about how mental blocks kind of came about naturally. It was something that you were having conversations and then addressing. So one thing I love is I love seeing all the things that Lyft does as a whole. But one of the things that you've introduced are mental block clinics. So can you talk more about them? Like, what are the formats? How, like, have they been received? What do you like about them?
So this has been a work in progress. I loved always the idea of like athlete group therapy because it's such a powerful thing for athletes to be with one another and you're like, oh, I'm not alone in how I'm feeling. Like this is actually normal. That's a big theme that I see in therapy is like, it's only me. It's not only them. It's like actually most of their team with like anxiety and all that kind of stuff. So group therapy was the original plan. Mental blocks kind of worked its way in there. And so what we do with the mental block clinics is we have therapists working alongside tumbling instructors, and we don't necessarily train the skill, we train the nervous system. And so we work towards exposure therapy for tumbling, which is tricky because if you think of exposure therapy like heights, you're like, okay, go to the tall building, use all your skills and expose yourself to the heights. But if you're exposing somebody to flipping upside down, there's a lot of risk involved in that. And so fine tuning the way that we do exposure therapy has been actually really fun. And I think we've finally got a really great system. So we do the clinics, we do a little bit of psychoeducation about like what a mental block is, not too much because we don't want it to be boring, but we want athletes to understand like, what's happening in their body uniquely for them because it's different for everyone. And then we go through actually noticing it in the tumbling space. And the clinic kind of goes like therapy, tumble. And then we move into the actual exposure, graded exposure to the fears that they have. And that might look really different for some athletes. For some athletes who struggle a ton with perfectionism, they might be doing back handsprings to their face intentionally. And those who struggle with, like, I always call it tornado brain, like racing thoughts, that kind of stuff, we might take a very different approach where we're doing things to pull the focus from here to body while they're doing a skill that's actually quite easy for them. And so therapy looks very different depending on who they are and what they have going on. And they get to just work through skills and then develop a plan moving forward.
I love the fact that it's tailored to what they're experiencing, but the fact is that you're pulling it back to what they're doing and what they're experiencing. And like, okay, like and I think that's one thing that is so beneficial for athletes, coaches, parents, is that ability to recognize what's happening in your body and then taking a moment to be like, okay, I need to address this and then I can move forward. Because when I address it, then my response to it is typically very different.
Yes. Yeah, we often pull focus to anxiety, which is the opposite of what you would normally want to do. You're like, get this thing away from me. I do not want to feel this way. So then you do everything to not feel that way. Therapy does the opposite where we're like, oh, you got to actually feel it now. So we call it riding the wave. We help athletes ride the anxiety wave in a way that feels like they're in control and they know what's going on. It's not as scary. Another theme, fear of fear. We see that a lot is fear of being anxious, and that just amps it up a ton.
Yeah. Which is also then kind of like compounded or just like pushed against each other, because then you go perform in front of all these people and you have the anxiety of like being in front of them and now you need to do the skill. But if you don't do the skill, then now your team's score is impacted. And so it definitely can really become a very big wave, but being able to tackle it, like you're mentioning, where exposure therapy and going through in these smaller situations allows them to develop those skills so that they can go out onto that mat and be like, yeah, I'm going to rock it. Like, I got this. Even though like I maybe am a little nervous, like I got this.
Yes. The way you're explaining that too is making me think of a lot of clients who we've seen who have panic attacks in sport. Such a common thing and such a scary thing for athletes especially to have a panic attack in front of an audience, how like the embarrassment and everything else that comes with that. And so a lot of what we do is just work on the anticipation of anxiety because it's so scary to go through that. Yeah. And so exposure can exist in that context sometimes as well, exposing them to their nerves and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
I love that. And so how have you found that families have received that or athletes have received those clinics?
Really well. It's been incredible feedback. And I think that people are really excited to finally have a resource that's based in something that is therapeutic and also sustainable, consistent. I think we really strive to stay away from like the 1 hour private and then like the one and dones. With mental blocks, often they're not really impacted by one and dones in the way that you would want them to be, because there's so many environmental triggers and other under the surface stuff that's going on. So we really tried to build skills that will last the athlete. So the next time the mental block does creep up, they're like, oh, I know what this is. This is that thing that my brain does. And here are the things that I need to do in order to get through it. And so there's a process. The other thing that is really helpful is that there is a process. And so athletes don't get as down on themselves when they can see a way forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I also think it's one of those things that we talk about it from an athlete perspective, but all of those skills that they're building are going to continue in the rest of their life. And it's going to set them up to be able to have those tools in their toolbox where if they go into an interview or they have to do a giant presentation in front of someone, or they have to go do something for the very first time and they're nervous about it, like those things we're learning as an athlete translate everywhere else in our life.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think of my own life. I'm sure you can think of yours. I'm like, thank goodness I went through that stuff, because I know I can get through what's in front of me now. And we often do that in therapy. Like athletes will come and be like, I have a job interview and I am terrified. And then we talk about like transferable skills and how we know that we're going to be able to get through it.
Yeah. So talking about therapy, I know that when I talk to people, and I know that you probably get this as well, that one of the biggest barriers or pushbacks that I often hear is the price side of it. And so one thing I love that you're doing is you're really trying to make it accessible and lower cost so that families are able to access support. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Therapy is pricey. I think that there's not real, I'm not going to like, therapy is pricey and it sucks. It really, really does. Being a therapist on this side, I understand why. The amount of education, the amount of time behind the scenes that happens outside of therapy, the capacity to only see a couple clients a day because of the heaviness and stuff that comes with it. And so balancing, like not burning out, that kind of stuff for a therapist, it's important for prices to be where they are so that we can sustain our role. As a parent, as an athlete, it's hard, especially if you don't have benefits to fork out like $200 for an hour and you're like, oh my God. And so what we're really trying to do, especially me coming from a not-for-profit world, I'm often thinking about how do I make costs lower and how do I make it more accessible? So that's why we have students, so that we can still charge our hourly rate as fully licensed therapists, but then also offer something that's quite good because they are supervised by our team. They do have an external supervisor that helps them. So athletes who do select that route it's almost like they have a team of people helping them, and then they have their therapist that they can see at a much lower cost.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, kind of switching as a different side of it, throughout your career, what are some of the most impactful ways that you have found opportunities and then been able to go after them?
You know what's funny is growing up, well, I've always been dyslexic and it's been an uphill battle for sure. But I think because of that, I have always sought out different opportunities because mainstream stuff just felt too hard. Like reading the manual felt way too hard. Understanding what somebody was telling me, following a boss, like way too hard. It was always much easier for me to be like, I'm just going to do it this way instead. And so when I left university and I moved back to my northern roots, when I started the cheerleading, it was more of like, hey, I want cheerleading here, so I'm just going to start it. And it turned into a career, which was really cool. So I've always been a bit of a builder in that way. I grabbed that opportunity there. And then with the role at the Blue Jays, I started in Toronto community housing as a supervisor of summer camps for the charitable arm. And within that, I was like, hey, I want to build a life promotion program. And so the whole team of Jays Care, we got together and we actually built it. And so that was my baby. I got to build it from the ground up, which was really, really fun, a great opportunity. And then again, I was like, you know what, there's more. I need more. So I'm going to like do my master's during the pandemic and having children, which I don't recommend. And then I'm going to just make a business because I feel like there's a need, like a big need for athletes, young athletes.
Yeah. If it's not there or you're not sure, build it.
Why not, right? Build it and they will come, hopefully. Yes.
I love that. And then you have been an athlete, you've been a gym owner, you've been a psychotherapist. There's all of these different things. But if you weren't doing your current role, what other role in cheerleading or in youth sports would you want to do?
I don't know. Maybe an event planner. I don't know. Part of me wants to be like, I would be a stay-at-home mom because right now, career and life pulling me in two different directions has been a challenge. I love my boys and I want to spend as much time with them as I possibly can. So that would be really fun. I would probably homeschool them. I could build that little curriculum for them. It would be so fun. But otherwise, I think my role with the Blue Jays was insanely rewarding, working with female youth at risk of suicide. That was a big role that I took really seriously. And I think the connections that I made in those communities will forever live in my, like, deep in my soul. And if I can work in some capacity with Indigenous community again, I would jump at that because, yeah, a piece of my heart is over there for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you think back to like Cait, who's at university and kind of experiencing cheerleading, what do you wish that someone would have told you as you're looking forward to your career and all the things that you're going to do?
I think looking back, there's always been a bit of an insecurity. I think we all have a little bit of an insecurity and we all
100%.
deal with it in different ways. And I think I often would deal with it as trying to be what they wanted me to be. So it's like that typical like people pleasing, but you're consistently like abandoning little pieces of yourself as you go, not saying no, like wondering what they would want, how they would want you to act, like how should you show up. And I think over time, that's hard. That's really, really hard. And I see that with a lot of the clients that I talk to. And so I think that would be something that old self here would probably go back and be like, hey, like, no, you're good. Stop doing that.
And then where can people connect with you and then find out where Lyft is doing all of the incredible things?
So I would say Instagram seems to be the spot that we are most on. I keep on trying to do other platforms, but Instagram is where we're at. I'm a therapist first. Social media comes way at the bottom of the barrel. So yes, Instagram DMs are fantastic. Email is great. And then we also have a website where they can find us there. The website's great because it gives us like the full bios of who we are and what we do, where we come from, and also the other therapy services that we offer as well.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, we'll make sure to link all of them in the description so they can go check you out and see all the incredible things that you're doing. But thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you. It's so much fun. I appreciate it.
I really hope that people can take a lot of different little nuggets from it, and that also, if they have any questions, they can reach out to you. Like we said, therapy is just an incredible thing, whether you're an athlete, a coach, or a parent, no matter what life stage or part of your journey that you're at. And I know that you share a lot of things on social media that will resonate with a lot of people. I also personally just love watching your little anxiety monster videos. Those are like my favorite to see. So if you are listening, make sure to check those out because they're just so much fun and they will make you laugh because they are very realistic.
Yes, I hope so. We have to make more. That's what we need to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, make sure to tune back in 2 weeks where we're answering the question, what happens after the routine ends?